Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode, we will discuss a case that will absolutely break your heart. A woman's life was ended because she refused to get an abortion. This case will make you wonder how someone could be so evil and incredibly heartless at the same time. Let's begin. Imagine waking up on the most important day of your life. The nursery is ready. The hospital bag is packed by the door, and in just a few hours, you are scheduled to be induced. Today is the day you finally meet your child. For 26-year-old India Kinamore, March 4th, 2023, was supposed to be a day of new beginnings. Instead, it became the centerpiece of one of the most calculated, cold-blooded conspiracies in the history of Hamilton County, Ohio. But what makes this story truly haunting isn't just the crime itself. It's the trail of digital breadcrumbs and a truly baffling moment of overpreparedness that would eventually lead investigators to the truth. Because how do you explain a man who applies for bereavement leave from his job for a death that hasn't even happened yet? This is the story of India Kinamore, a case that sat in the unsolved files for years before forensic science and a suspect's own staggering arrogance brought the walls crashing down. To understand how we got to that courtroom in Cincinnati, we have to look at who India was. Born on May 12, 1996, India was a young woman who, by all accounts, was vibrant and deeply connected to her family. She already had a 6-year-old son who was the light of her life. By early 2023, she was 26, living in Colerain Township and preparing to bring a second life into the world. She was in the final hours of her pregnancy, with her delivery date set for the very day she would lose her life. Now, true crime is often filled with stories of wrong place, wrong time, but India's case is the opposite. She was in the one place she should have been safe, her home, asleep in her bed. Around 6 a.m. on that Saturday morning, the silence of the Colerain Township neighborhood was shattered. India was shot and killed while she slept. And because she was just hours away from giving birth, the tragedy was doubled. 2 lives were taken before one had even officially begun. When the police arrived, the scene they found looked like a textbook tragedy. It appeared to be a burglary gone wrong, a home invasion where a struggle or a surprise encounter led to a fatal shooting. It was chaotic, it was heartbreaking, and for a long time, it was a mystery. For over 2 years, India Kinamore's name sat on the Ohio Attorney General's list of unsolved homicides. You can imagine the frustration of the family, the weight of the silence from the police, and the growing fear in the community. But behind the scenes, detectives were playing a very long, very patient game of digital chess. Let's talk about the man at the center of this storm, Kavon Warren. Kayvon was 30 years old and the father of India's unborn child. On the surface, he might have seemed like a grieving partner, but as investigators peeled back the layers, a much darker image emerged. You see, Kayvon was living a life of profound complication and, frankly, staggering deception. At the time of India's pregnancy, Kayvon was already involved with another woman. He was also facing a mountain of financial pressure. We're not just talking about being short on rent. He was facing severe financial hardship, including the loss of his home. In his mind, a new baby wasn't a blessing. It was a liability he couldn't afford and a complication he didn't want. This brings us to a concept forensic analysts call reproductive coercion. According to investigators and prosecutors, Kayvon had pressured India to get an abortion. He didn't want the child. But India made a different choice. She wanted her baby. Beyond her personal desire to be a mother again, Ohio law at the time placed restrictions on abortions after 6 weeks, effectively closing that door even if she had been undecided. For Kayvon, the walls were closing in. He was losing his house, he was juggling multiple relationships, and a child was on the way that he felt would ruin his carefully constructed, if failing, life. Now, usually, when someone is facing these kinds of stressors, they look for a legal way out. They look for a second job, they file for bankruptcy, they move. But Kavon Warren allegedly decided on a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And he didn't do it alone. This is where the story shifts from a domestic tragedy to a calculated criminal conspiracy. Kayvon didn't just snap, he planned. He allegedly recruited 2 accomplices, 20-year-old Robert Irvin and 22-year-old Lamar Morris Suggs. Think about that for a second. 3 grown men sitting around, discussing the logistics of ending the life of a woman who is 9 months pregnant. It's the kind of moral vacuum that's hard to wrap your head around. The plan was to stage a robbery. They wanted the police to think a random criminal had broken in and pulled the trigger. They wanted the chaos of a burglary to mask the precision of a hit. And for a while, it worked. The case went cold. But Kayvon and his associates made the mistake that almost every modern criminal makes. They forgot that their phones are essentially tracking devices that record every thought and movement. When Hamilton County Prosecutor Connie Pillich finally announced the 13-count indictment in 2024, the evidence she laid out was a masterclass in modern forensics. It wasn't just one smoking gun, it was a mountain of digital data. First, there were the cell phone records. Detectives were able to show that Kayvon and his accomplices met up before the murder. Then there was the GPS triangulation. In the age of Google Maps and constant connectivity, your phone is constantly pinging towers. The data showed the trio at the same location at the same time, a location that didn't bode well for their "I wasn't there" defense. But then, we get to the part of the story that feels like it's straight out of a World's Dumbest Criminals segment. Kavon Warren, in a display of either extreme overconfidence or total lack of foresight, applied for bereavement leave from his job before the murder was committed. Let that sink in. Most people have to provide an obituary or a death certificate after a loved one passes to get time off work. Kayvon apparently decided to skip the paperwork and just book the time off in advance for the tragedy he had already scheduled for Saturday morning. It's a detail that underscores the chilling, premeditated nature of the crime. He wasn't just planning a murder, he was managing his vacation days around it. And then there was the group text. Because apparently, if you're going to conspire to commit a capital crime, you might as well do it in a format that is easily searchable by the FBI. The investigation revealed a group chat where the 3 men discussed the murder plan. It's here that the narrative of a robbery gone wrong completely disintegrated. You don't text your buddies about a burglary that involves targeting a specific woman in her bed at 6 a.m. on her delivery date. As the investigation deepened, more heartbreaking details surfaced. On the morning of the murder, India's 6-year-old son was in the house. During a no-bond hearing for Kayvon Warren, India's mother, India Kinamore, gave gut-wrenching testimony. She described the moment she got a phone call from her grandson. The boy was screaming, "My mommy has been shot." But the most chilling part of that call? Terry could hear Kayvon Warren in the background. As the 6-year-old was panicking, he was asking Kayvon, "What do I say? What do I say?" And Kayvon's response was simply, "Just tell your Nana to get here." Imagine the scene. A child standing over his mother, a man who knows exactly what happened standing behind him, and a grandmother on the other end of the line hearing the final moments of her daughter's life through the eyes of her grandson. It is the definition of a nightmare. The legal fallout was swift once the indictment landed. Kayvon Warren, Robert Irvin, and Lamar Morris Suggs were hit with a 13-count indictment. This included 4 counts of aggravated murder, as well as charges for burglary and felonious assault. Because the victims were a pregnant woman and her unborn child, the charges reflect the loss of 2 lives. Prosecutors have alleged that while Warren was the mastermind, Lamar Suggs was the one who actually pulled the trigger. During the court proceedings, the community and the family finally got to see the men they believe stole India's future. The judge granted no bond for Warren, a sign of the severity of the charges and the strength of the evidence. Prosecutor Connie Pillich was clear. This was a case of ultimate betrayal. She noted that this should have been one of the happiest days of India's life. Instead, the person who should have been celebrating a new life with her was allegedly the one ensuring it never happened. But even in the face of such darkness, India's family and the Cincinnati community have fought to make sure her name stands for something more than just a case file. A scholarship was established in her honor, the India Kinamore Memorial Scholarship. It's designed to support African American female high school seniors or undergraduate students in Ohio who are pursuing higher education. It's a powerful legacy. India was a woman who was looking forward to the future, who loved her son and who was ready to be a mother again. By supporting the education of young women who share her background, her family is ensuring that India's drive and ambition live on in others. The scholarship asks applicants to describe how they measure success, a poignant question when you consider that India's life was cut short just as she was reaching a milestone of personal success. When we look back at the India Kinamore case, there are several lessons that emerge, many of which are common themes in true crime, but are rarely seen with such devastating clarity. First, there's the issue of intimate partner violence. We often think of abuse as physical marks, but this case highlights the reality of reproductive coercion, the attempt to control a partner's reproductive choices through pressure, threats, or, in this extreme case, violence. It's a reminder that the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive or controlling relationship is often when she is pregnant or attempting to leave. Second, there is the incredible power of digital forensics. We live in a world where we are never truly alone or unseen. Every text, every GPS ping, and even every workplace HR request is a piece of a puzzle. Kayvon Warren likely thought he was being clever by staging a robbery, but he was living in a 1990s crime drama while the police were using 21st century technology. You cannot outrun your own data. Finally, there's the resilience of a family. For 2.5 years, India's mother and sister had to wait. They had to see her case on unsolved lists. They had to live with the knowledge of who was likely responsible while waiting for the legal system to catch up. Their presence in the courtroom, their testimony, and their work to establish a scholarship show a level of strength that is truly humbling. As the legal process continues for Warren, Irvin, and Suggs, the story of India Kinamore serves as a sobering look at the intersection of greed, cowardice, and the digital age. It's a story about a woman who deserved to see her baby grow up, a 6-year-old who deserved to have his mother, and a justice system that, while slow, proved that you can't bury the truth even if you try to schedule your bereavement leave in advance. The next time you hear a story about a perfect crime, remember India. Remember that the smartest criminals are often the ones blinded by their own arrogance. And remember that behind every headline and every case file, there is a person like India, a daughter, a mother, and a friend whose life was worth so much more than the tragedy that ended it. What do you think about the evidence in this case? Does the bereavement leave detail strike you as the ultimate proof of premeditation, or is it just the tip of the iceberg in a much larger story of deception? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to support India's legacy, look into the India Kinamore Memorial Scholarship. Sometimes, the best way to fight darkness is to help someone else find their light. Stay tuned for commentary by true crime analyst Carlton Carrington.
Here's my personal commentary on this tragedy. The case is one of the worst I've seen in over 20 years of analyzing murder cases. I immediately felt sick after reading the details of this one. India Kinamore was a young woman dating a man who only wanted her for sex. He didn't love her and didn't care for her. He was dating India and another woman at the same time. Unfortunately for him, India got pregnant and he pressured her to get an abortion. But two things prevented her from getting an abortion. First, she didn't want to. And second, an Ohio law also prevented it because she was over 6 weeks pregnant. What I don't understand about men like this is that, why have unprotected sex if you don't want to have a baby? Do men realize that having an abortion is not something most women want to do? They act like getting an abortion is like throwing out the trash. For many women, the physical part is hard. What's even more difficult is the emotional part of getting rid of a life that is growing inside of you. For most women, having an abortion affects them for the rest of their lives, while men don't even think twice about it. Kayvon was determined to get rid of his own child, so he conspired with 2 thugs to kill the expectant mother and child the same day she was about to give birth. I don't think there's anything more sick than that. Kayvon was an absolute monster. India was murdered while she slept, along with her unborn child. Kayvon and his accomplices should be given the death penalty. How can these men go along with a plan to kill a pregnant woman. They have absolutely no heart. And let me tell you how this case was solved 2.5 years after the murder. First, the detectives did an amazing job investigating this case. Cell phone records show that Kayvon and his accomplices met up before the murder. GPS triangulation showed them at the same location. Additionally, Kayvon created a group chat with his accomplices to discuss the murder plan. The nail in the coffin for these idiots is that Kayvon was so stupid, he applied for bereavement leave before committing the murder. That's gotta be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen done by a suspect. It's a very sad story for the victim, her unborn child, and her 6-year-old son, who will now have to live without a mother. My heart goes out to India's family and friends. I am here with you, and we will see justice prevail. Let me know what you think about this case. I'll see you all in the next video. My name is Carlton, and thank you for watching.